Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was doubted at every step of his career.
I'm there every day. I see it every day. I'm in the game. Just watch the games, man.
As a skinny kid from Hamilton, Ontario, he was cut from his high school team.
Thought I was good. I thought I was gonna make the team. And didn't end up making it. Obviously was disappointed and upset.
In the NBA, he was traded for a brighter star, thrown into a package for Paul George without even a second thought.
The Clippers have made a deal to acquire Paul George from the Oklahoma City Thunder, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari heading to Oklahoma City.
Even when he began to establish himself as a top player, he was labeled as a free throw merchant and someone who relies on the ref's whistle to make an impact.
The first time I put on the jersey, they didn't know who I was, what I was about, and I wanted to show them.
May the truth be told, I was down bad, now I got it on go. Finna count my dough till my thumb got slit. Put my neck on glitz, put my name on the list. Finna shine on the bitch,
You watched Shai Gilgeous-Alexander last night? This brother was dancing on dudes.
Yeah, we're going up. Hey, before the world dies.
Yet through all the noise, all the doubt, he became the best.
Turn me up, I ain't even hit 10, brother. Shit like wait, let him feel my bass. Finna test your jaw like my last name Davis.
The MVP.
But you led this team to the best record in the NBA. Congratulations. You are the NBA Kia MVP.
This is the story of a Canadian underdog who turned every doubter into a believer.
Spark that shit, I've been feeling on edge. I'ma burn that down to the ash get cold.
This is the rise of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shai's story begins in Hamilton, Ontario. He was just a skinny kid with a big dream to make it to the NBA. His mother was an Olympic sprinter, and his dad played basketball in high school in Toronto. So sports, it was in his blood already. But Shai would soon learn that talent wasn't enough to make it to the top. As a kid, he was fast and full of energy, always playing against older kids on the local courts. His dad coached him early, teaching him the basics, the fundamentals, and building his confidence. But when Shai got to the 9th grade at St. Thomas More Catholic Secondary School, he faced his first setback. He didn't make the junior basketball team. It crushed him. Many kids would have given up. They would not even have pursued basketball. But Shai kept working. He hit the gym earlier than anyone else. He practiced harder than he had ever done before. He played that year on the school's lower level team, the midget team. I don't know how I feel about that name, to be honest. And it was here that he dominated. By the end of the season, Shai had led his team to a city championship and was named the MVP. I guess it was a foreshadowing of future events to come. That moment taught him something that he'd never forget. Setbacks don't have to stop you. They can actually make you stronger. With this new confidence, Shai moved to Sir Allan McNabb Secondary School, and it was there that his game really took off. The skinny kid from Hamilton started to believe in himself even more. He started to play like someone who knew he could be great. As good as Shai was doing, he wanted more. He knew that if he wanted to make it big, he had to play against the best. So at just 16 years old, he made a bold move. He left the polar bears and igloos in Canada, and he moved to America, to a small school called Hamilton Heights Christian Academy in Tennessee. It wasn't an easy transition. He was shy, far from his family, and even though America and Canada might seem similar, they're quite different countries with different cultures. But he stayed focused. He was chasing his dream. In Tennessee, Shai played against some of the top high school players in the US. It's exactly what he wanted, a higher level of competition. And as his body started to grow stronger, his game also got so much better. And through that, his confidence kept building. By his senior year, he was the leader of the team. He averaged 18.4 points, 4.4 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. Coaches loved how smart he was on the court and how hard he worked. At this point, Shai became a 4-star recruit, one of the top high school players in the country. But even with all the attention, Shai stayed humble. He never forgot what it felt like to be doubted. He still stayed late after practices, worked extra on his game, and the hard work paid off. He was named the MVP of the 2017 Kentucky Derby Classic, and even played in the Nike Hoop Summit for the World Select Team, which is a big honor for international players. And now, it was time to continue his dream to college. At first, he had committed to the University of Florida, but then something big happened. Kentucky came calling. And this was huge because Kentucky is one of the most famous basketball schools in the world. It's like a factory for producing NBA players. Now you might think it was an easy choice, but it actually wasn't. Because Shai knew that Kentucky had a lot of stars. He knew that he'd have to fight for every minute. Nothing would be gifted to him when he arrived. But deep down, he believed this was a team where he could really shine. And if you play well in Kentucky, your future can be very bright. So in 2017, he packed his bags again, and the next chapter of his journey was about to begin. When Shai arrived at the University of Kentucky, he wasn't the star anymore. In fact, he wasn't even a starter. The team was already full of big name players, and Shai actually started the season on the bench, backing up the point guard Quade Green. It was the same story all over again. He'd have to prove himself or be forgotten. But this is what makes Shai so good. He didn't complain. He stayed quiet, he worked hard, and waited for his chance. And that chance came in a big game against Louisville, one of Kentucky's biggest rivals. Now at this point, Kentucky was a little bit shaky. They had just lost to UCLA, but Shai stepped up in a big way. 24 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. Kentucky ended up winning, and suddenly everyone saw what this freshman could do. Around this time, Shai made another small but pretty powerful change. He cut off his signature long braids. Now you might think, well, it's just a haircut, why does that matter? For Shai though, it was more than just a haircut. It was like he was leaving behind his old version and transforming into a new Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Whether you think this was cringe or not, it worked, because it was during this period that he transitioned from a 6th man to a starting point guard. Now at this point, Kentucky had actually hit a rough patch. They lost 4 games in a row, and fans began to worry. But through all the chaos, Shai was pretty steady. He kept getting better game by game. In fact, by mid-season, he was one of the team's leaders. He was the one controlling the pace, setting up his teammates, and hitting big shots when they needed him the most. When the SEC tournament came around, Shai was on fire. Game after game he stepped up, and he led Kentucky to the title and was even named the SEC tournament MVP. The kid who had started the season on the bench was now the most important player on the team. In the NCAA tournament, Shai kept it going. Against Buffalo in the second round, he was incredible. 27 points on 10 of 12 shooting. Plus, he also had 6 rebounds and 6 assists. Buffalo tried everything they could to stop him, but they just couldn't. Shai did whatever he wanted on the court. At this point, scouts started to take notice. Everyone was talking about the tall guard from Canada. But then came the heartbreak. In the Sweet 16, Kentucky lost to Kansas State. In the final seconds, down by 3, Shai had a chance to tie the game. He took the shot, but he missed. A player who had been so clutch throughout his career unfortunately couldn't make it that day. After the buzzer, he crouched on the floor, holding his head in his hands. It was over. That moment hurt, but it lit a fire inside him. And a few weeks later, Shai declared for the 2000 NBA draft. In just 1 year, he had gone from being a bench player to a leader to now a future NBA star. Draft night in 2018 was a moment that Shai had dreamed about his whole life. He sat with his family, his heart racing, waiting to hear his name. And then, it happened. The Charlotte Hornets called his name with the 11th pick. And just like that, he was officially an NBA player. But the night actually wasn't over. Moments later, Shai found out that he was actually being traded to the Clippers. There was so much going on that I don't know if Shai took it all in, but he looked calm, smiling through it all. And to be honest, he was probably happy. It's much better to head to the bright lights of LA than it is to go to Charlotte. But no matter where he was, he knew that he had to prove that he belonged in the NBA. Now, even though he was still thin and young, Shai didn't play scared. In fact, he played with a surprising amount of confidence for a rookie. In his first year, he actually earned a spot in the starting lineup, going head to head with some of the league's biggest stars: Curry, Westbrook, James Harden. And to be honest, he was holding his own. On December 17th, 2018, he dropped 24 points against Portland. A month later, he did it again, this time against the Golden State Warriors. And remember, this was the peak Warriors. KD, Curry, Green, Klay Thompson. And yet as a rookie, Shai was giving them buckets. During this time, the Clippers locker room was full of tough veterans, guys like Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams. But even these guys were impressed by the calm Canadian rookie. By the end of the season, Shai had made the NBA All-Rookie second team. He averaged 11 points and 3 assists. But more importantly, he showed everyone that he has a lot of potential. And he proved it even more in the playoffs. The Clippers faced the Golden State Warriors in the first round, and everyone thought the Warriors would dominate. Yet in Game 4, Shai had his moment. He scored a career-high 25 points at the time. Since then, his career high has improved tremendously, and even though it was his first experience in the playoffs against the best team in the league, he was attacking the basket without fear. He was hitting big shots in clutch moments. The Clippers ended up losing the series in 6 games, but Shai had shown that he wasn't afraid of the moment. He wasn't afraid of anyone. It seemed like Shai was destined for stardom in LA. But then came another twist. In the summer of 2019, the Clippers made a blockbuster trade to get Paul George, and Shai was thrown into that deal. At the time, LA knew that Shai had potential. In fact, so did Oklahoma, because that's why they asked him to be a part of the trade package. But the Clippers definitely saw him as a throwaway piece, a good player who had good potential, but not somebody who was untouchable. Well, I think by now they've probably regretted that decision. So after just 1 season in Los Angeles, Shai was heading to Oklahoma City. At just 20 years old, he was packing his bags again, ready to start fresh. Now when Shai got to Oklahoma City, everything was changing. The Thunder had just let go of their 2 biggest stars, Russell Westbrook and Paul George. They were supposed to rebuild, lose games, and tank for the future. But Shai didn't see it that way. He saw an opportunity to grow. And when you team up with Chris Paul, let's just say your team is not going to be losing a lot of games. Playing with a veteran point guard like CP3 was a life-changing moment for Shai. He listened, he learned, and he soaked up everything he could from a future Hall of Famer. But he didn't just sit back and watch Chris Paul do his thing and play with his balls. He took what he learned and he actually applied it. He led the Thunder in scoring in only his second year in the NBA. In fact, in December of 2019, he faced his old team, the Clippers, and he dropped a career high at the time, 32 points, and helped the Thunder win 118-112. And this wasn't just about revenge. It was about proving that OKC had a new star now, that Shai wasn't just some throwaway piece in the package. Chris Paul praised him a lot that year.
Who he is fundamentally, and he is a better person than he is at hooping.
The two were fearless, and in close games, they did a lot of damage. It was nice to see that Shai, despite being young, wasn't afraid of asking for the ball and taking big shots. The Thunder ended up shocking everyone that year, because instead of tanking, they were actually winning games. Too many of them, because they ended up finishing as the 5th seed in the West and made the playoffs. Shai, in just his second season, was already leading a playoff team. Think about that.
SGA got it up, is it good, and he banked it in!
In the playoffs, the Thunder had to face a Houston Rockets team that was kind of stacked. They had James Harden, Russell Westbrook. The Thunder ended up pushing them to a tough 7-game series, but ultimately they fell short. It wasn't the ending they had hoped for. But Shai didn't hang his head. He had learned so much that year. Lessons from Chris Paul, experience in close games, and now he had even more playoff experience under his belt. He was no longer just a rising talent. He was slowly becoming a star. After Chris Paul left OKC, it became Shai's team. The Thunder handed him the keys for the 2020-2021 season, and since he wasn't playing next to a veteran star anymore, he was the leader. But he was ready, and early in the season, he showed it. On a cold December night against Charlotte, Shai scored 24 points, grabbed 7 rebounds, and handed out 9 assists. But it wasn't the stat line that people are gonna remember from that night. It was the final play. With the game tied, Shai got the ball and calmly hit a buzzer beater jumper to win the game for OKC. It was the first game winner of his NBA career. And what was crazy is that he didn't do any wild celebrations, he wasn't yelling or screaming, just a simple fist pump. Business as usual. You can tell he was inspired by Kobe. Then 2 months later, Shai had another breakout moment. On February 24th, 2021, he dropped 42 points to lead the Thunder past the Spurs. Game by game, his confidence was growing. Fans and analysts were beginning to see it. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was a star. But just when things were going great, everything came to a stop. In late March, Shai felt a sharp pain in his foot. It turned out to be an ankle injury, an injury that ended his season after just 35 games. It hurt him a lot, not just physically, but also mentally. Shai has now admitted it, that watching from the sidelines that year was one of the hardest things he'd ever done. When you're a young player and you get an injury at a time where you're just about to start rising, you begin to doubt yourself. Can I ever return to that level again? Have I lost my rhythm? But Shai didn't stay down for long. He used the summer to recover and train, and the Thunder showed that they still believed in him. That offseason, they gave him a 5-year, $172 million extension. The once skinny kid from Hamilton, Ontario, was now a franchise player, with a city and team counting on him to lead the way. When Shai returned, he began to face a new set of challenges, because at this point, OKC was still rebuilding. They weren't expected to win much, but every night, Shai still showed up. In December of 2021, when he faced the Clippers, the team that once traded him, he pulled up from deep and hit a game-winning 3-pointer at the buzzer. 4 days later, he had his second career triple-double, 27 points, 11 rebounds, 12 assists, all against a pretty good Denver Nuggets team. That week, he was actually named the Western Conference Player of the Week, the first time he had received the award in his career, the first of many. At this point, Shai wasn't just a scorer anymore. He was doing everything. He was rebounding, he was passing, he could even defend. Not to mention that he was a leader on the team. It's why he had the most minutes under his belt and had the most touches. Because OKC, they kind of needed him for everything. But just as he was beginning to rise again, more bad luck. Towards the end of the season, Shai sprained his ankle, and with OKC already out of the playoff race, the team decided to shut him down again. For the second year in a row, Shai's season ended early. He had put up the best numbers of his career so far, 24.5 points and 5.9 assists per game. But behind those numbers was frustration. Shai missed the game, he missed competing. Once again, he had to watch his teammates from the sidelines. But these moments made him even hungrier to succeed. He wanted to return and become even better than what he was before the injury. So that summer, he went to work again. Shai isn't like Ben Simmons. He wasn't recording his workouts or making public posts. He was just quietly preparing for his return. And it was the 2022-2023 season that changed everything. This was the season that Shai didn't just play like a star, he became one. From the very first games in October, he came out on fire. fire. He averaged 32 points, 5 rebounds, and over 7 assists in a perfect 3-0 week. The league once again took notice, and he was named the Western Conference Player of the Week. It was a sign of what was to come. Something special was happening in Oklahoma. On November 16th, Shai delivered one of the best performances of his career at that point. Against the Wizards, he scored 42 points, grabbed 6 rebounds, and dished out 7 assists. But it was once again the final moment that made people realize just how good he is. With just seconds left on the clock, he hit a step-back 3 at the buzzer to win the game, 121-120. Again, this is Mr. Aura. He didn't celebrate like crazy, he just hit the shot and walked away. Thunder fans hadn't seen a player this clutch, this good for them since the days of Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant. And if for whatever reason you thought that moment was a fluke, a month later, Shai did it again. Another buzzer beater, this time against Portland. Another win, another game winner. At this point, nobody could deny it. Shai was a superstar. Every single night, he was lighting up the scoreboard. In February of 2023, he terrorized Portland again, giving them 44 points on 13 of 16 shooting from the field. That performance actually made him the first player in Thunder's history to score 40 plus points while shooting over 80%. And then came the moment that every kid dreams of. Every kid who wants to make it to the NBA. Shai was named to his first NBA All-Star game. Coaches voted for him, fans voted for him. It was obvious to everybody. He was one of the best guards in the game. What made Shai good was that he wasn't just incredible with the ball in his hands. Everybody knew that he could score and create for others, but it was that he was also a good defender. He joined Michael Jordan as the only guard in NBA history to average 30 plus points, 4 plus rebounds, 4 plus assists, and at least 1 steal and 1 block per game while shooting over 50%. I mean, that's not just great company to be a part of, that's legendary company. As a result, Shai was named to the All-NBA first team, and he even finished 5th in MVP voting. The Thunder didn't make the playoffs that year, they just missed out on the play-in, but nobody was disappointed, because it was pretty clear now. A new era had begun. Shai had gone from a promising young player to flat out one of the best in the world, and he was only 24 years old. By the time the 2024 season rolled around, Shai was a superstar. Having finished 5th in the MVP race the year before, and watching the playoffs from home, Shai was itching to get back on the court. He worked non-stop over the summer, and you could see it in his game. He looked way sharper, stronger, faster. He was locked in. They don't call this guy Mr. Aura for nothing. And it paid off because right from the start of the season, the Thunder took off. This team was no longer rebuilding, they were ready to make noise. They played fast, unselfish basketball. Everybody moved, everybody shared the ball, and the guy who was making the engine run was Shai. In November, he dropped 43 points against Cleveland, barely breaking a sweat. I mean, the Cavs had one of the best teams in the regular season, and Shai did whatever he wanted to them. He also recorded a career-high 7 steals that night, showing just how far his defense had come too. Win after win, OKC kept rising. At one point, they had a 13-game winning streak, the longest in their history since the team moved from Seattle. And Shai wasn't just scoring, he ran the show. He slowed down the game when needed, drove to the basket when he had to, and he stayed calm. You never see this guy get angry or lose his cool. Whether they're up 20 or down 10, he just does his thing. And as a result, his teammates followed him. OKC just played hard and tried to get the win. No extra noise, barely any complaining from them, just great basketball. And Shai was now the leader of a contender. OKC had the best record in the league, and everybody had labeled them as favorites to win the Larry O'Brien. And when you look at the performances Shai was putting up, it's not hard to see why. He got 54 points against the Utah Jazz, then he put up 52 points on Golden State, and then on February 5th, he dropped 50 more on Phoenix. 3 50-plus point games in 2 weeks, and the Thunder just kept winning. By the end of the season, Shai had done something that few ever achieved. He won the NBA scoring title, averaging 32.7 points per game. He also averaged over 6 assists and 5 rebounds per night. I'm telling you guys, he was doing everything. And since he can also defend, it meant that the Thunder had 0 defensive liabilities on the court. OKC finished the season with a 68-14 record. They outscored teams by nearly 13 points per game, one of the best differentials in NBA history. And at the center of it all, it was Shai. So it came as no surprise that MVP talks began. The debates went back and forth. Jokic had an amazing season, but Shai had something different. He was the best player on the best team. He was the reason that OKC were the #1 seed, and others saw that as well, which is why he ended up winning the award. At just 26 years old, he had made history, only the second ever Canadian to win the award after Steve Nash. He thanked his teammates, his coaches, his family.
Without you guys, none of this would be possible. And I want you guys to know, like, this award is your award too. So thank you guys so much.
And he actually paid tribute to Steve Nash. The MVP trophy was heading home, north of the border. It was a great moment of pride, not just for Shai, but for Canadians everywhere. After the MVP win, he actually gifted luxury watches to each of his teammates. That's just who he is. A guy who's humble in victory, grateful in the spotlight, and always focused on the team. But what's crazy is that he wasn't even finished. He led the Thunder on a deep playoff run all the way to the NBA Finals, the first of his career, and the first for OKC since the 2012 final. He had proven that he wasn't just a regular season merchant. He wasn't only good because of his free throws. He could shine on the biggest stage. From empty gyms in Hamilton, Ontario, to NBA arenas packed with fans chanting his name, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had done it all. He wasn't just one of the best anymore. He was the best. To see just how good the team around Shai has been, you have to check out this video right here.